Team Canada bows out once again in the quarterfinals of the World Junior Hockey Championships for the second year in a row. Who's to blame? Do you blame the players? Do you blame the coaches? Do you blame management? Do you blame all three? I'll tell you who I'll blame on the next 1420 Sports Bar podcast. Four Beer Sports talking a whole lot more. Let's get into her.
The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
1420 Sports Bar Podcast. Four Beer Sports talking a whole lot more. Join host Brent Radlinski as he bellies up to the bar and gets the conversations going that'll make you think you're sitting in your local watering room. It's sports, beer, and shenanigans. So sit back, grab a few beers, and let's get in. Well, the 1420 Sports Bar Podcast, Four Beer Sports talking a whole lot more for this third day of January 2025. Getting that right. It's one of those things. 2025. Today's show, as always, is brought to you by SeatGeek.com, the SeatGeek app. Use promo code 1420SEAT at SeatGeek.com today and save yourself $20 on your first purchase. Remember, we are part of the Belly Up Media Network. Go to BellyUpSports.com for all their great podcasts and great articles. Going to probably get one out there today for on probably today's topic. I'll get one out there for your reading pleasure. And thank you for all those who listen and to subscribe to our YouTube channel and on podcast form. Make sure you subscribe to both wherever it is you get your podcasts and over there on our YouTube channel. It helps. There's lots of stuff going on. Subscribe so you can see my smiling face on YouTube, not just hear me yapping away on a daily basis here from 1420 World Headquarters. Anyways, well, it's over just as I kind of thought it would. I was hoping for Team Canada to get me another couple of games or one more at least. Would have been nice to watch a game tomorrow night against the Americans, a little revenge tour, but wasn't meant to be. Canada came into the game on a whimper, and they kind of went out on a whimper. They had a great third period comeback. We'll get into that in half a second, but falling down early and Canada loses. It's just one of those things that happen. The team didn't fare well throughout the tournament. It just didn't. It didn't come together from the second game against Latvia, and they just kept getting worse from there. Didn't score enough goals, and that's how hockey is. You don't score enough goals, you lose hockey games. Pretty simple. And there's a lot of people pointing fingers now, lots of blame. We'll get into last night's game a little bit. 4-3 loss. It was started out poorly. Canada gave up the early goal less than a minute in, and then they tied it up, I think. And then the own goal, the defenseman knocked it in the net on his own. Dickinson, I think his name was, knocked into his own net. I don't want to say a comedy of errors, just a mistake that happened, and Canada just couldn't overcome their own shortcomings throughout the game. Penalties once again, where you want to blame the referee and go right ahead and blame the referee for the knee call that may or may not have been a major at first glance. Like, oh, that's a bad one, but then you look at it again, it wasn't that bad, and the Chechen player, he kind of played it up a little bit, and looked like he got shot in the grassy knoll in Dallas, Texas, 1960, whatever year that Kennedy got shot, and then all of a sudden he was out playing the next shift later. I think hockey's really got to do something about that. They got to make sure when a kid or a player, an adult, it could be, when they go down, they got to be down, and you can't. There's no magical formula. Miyagi isn't downstairs putting his hands together and putting on Danielson's knee and making everything better. So you just don't know what you can do with that, but the kid looked like he was done, so that probably factored in to the length of the penalty to be the 5-minute major and then losing a D-man. But we'll get to that later on too. It just didn't get going for Canada. They had a great third period. They looked like they were going to tie it up. They looked like they were well on their way to getting something going. They finally made some line changes. They put the McKenna kid out there with Cowan. They had some great chances, a little bit of buzzing. Why they didn't do that before, I have no idea. I couldn't tell you why. Dave Cameron, well, I can tell you why, because Dave Cameron's a bit of an idiot, and he's not a very personable guy. He's probably one of those guys, the smartest guy in the room, no matter what. So that's probably why that didn't happen. But it's just a lot going on there. And you look back since they lost to the American team 4-1 on New Year's Eve. They hadn't hit the ice since, and I don't understand this at all. And then Dave Cameron was asked why after the game last night, why they weren't on the ice, why they didn't do a pregame skate, a practice on New Year's Day, and he said that the kids were exhausted. They're 18 and 19 years old, playing the tournament of their lives. They're not exhausted. That's a cop out. And if they're exhausted, then there's something wrong there. Because man, the adrenaline alone would be enough to get you going. And these kids are all going to take a few weeks off now before they go back to their junior teams, and you get one chance, man. They weren't exhausted. That's a cop out. Why that? Whoever came up with that idea to not play these guys, I don't know. That's probably the same guy who decided to have that challenge on that non-goal last night. I could see that one wasn't a goal. I could see the net was off. That's a terrible challenge. Terrible. But anyways, getting back to this not practicing and not being on the skate, you don't got to skate these kids' asses off. You don't. Just go out there, run over a few things, keep them fresh, keep things going, try some different things, try some different power play looks, on and off, 20 minutes, see you later. You're not bag skating them. To say that you're exhausted, that's an absolute cop-out. So whoever came up with this stupid idea to not play these kids after losses, to not have, little Billy and little Johnny, little Matt, little whoever their names are, Gavin, and I shouldn't say that he was good, little Easton and the rest of them, to say they couldn't practice, that's ridiculous. And that's on the coaching staff, that's on the management staff for not keeping these kids fresh for a few days, and to not go out there and just get things different and work on the power play, work on the penalty kill, because I knew they were going to take penalties. That wasn't going to go away, because Cameron even said that we're not going to get rid of these penalties. There's nothing I can do, he says. Like, I've never seen a Canadian coach so unlikable, and that just fed right down to the team. But I'm not going to blame the kids. They did try. They put in their best effort, and on it goes. That Cameron, that was an awful coaching performance. Just an awful coaching performance, and his personality didn't help him at all either. I probably wouldn't feel as strongly as I do about Dave Cameron if his personality was a little bit better. But he just, every chance he got to dig himself out of a hole, no, he just put another shovel into his grave. Like, just an unpersonable ass throughout the entire tournament. And it just never a good look. He didn't have a good look once, screaming at the referees about the penalties last night. You know what? Like, say what you want about penalties and the two kneeing, especially the one late in the third. The one in the first period ended up kind of cutting itself out because the Canada did get the shorthanded goal that got them back in the hockey game. So that kind of just got rid of that. So that was kind of a non-factor. But the late penalty, which I didn't think it was a penalty to watch that the way it turned out, that it led to the eventual power play goal to win it for Czechia. It probably wasn't a penalty. But, international hockey forever and ever and ever, as long as I can remember, the refereeing's been a little bit suspect, and they call things a little bit differently. And these kids who get away with different things in junior hockey, and these guys who get away with different things in the National Hockey League, it's just called differently in international hockey. And if you ever, and I'll take this, I've been saying it forever and ever, and Garrett from Two Dudes of Sport News, he said the same thing. On a different thing altogether. But basically, if you leave it in the referee's hands, you weren't going to win anyways. If it comes down to one call, you should have left up to that one call. Never leave it in someone else's hands. And if that's what Canada was relying on, to not leave it in someone's hands, they were doomed to begin with. So for the coach to be freaking out at like he did, I don't understand that. You're not going to change his mind. Are they going to go, and I was a referee yeller? I go, I get it. But I've never seen a referee goes, you know what, Dave? You know what, Brent? You're right. I made a mistake. We looked at it on the video, and you're right. Everybody else, you know what? Let's take this guy out of the box. I know emotion. You want to show a little bit of pushback. I get that. But Dave Cameron's not the guy to be doing that. Dave Cameron was not the guy to be addressing anybody. The guy, he just didn't have anything going personality-wise. He's 60 whatever years old. Has he had a touch? Yeah. Has he had some success in the World Juniors in past years? Yeah, he has. But this one was a bad run for Dave Cameron. It didn't look good. Peter Anholt, the management and staff, and Brent Seabrook was on that whole deal too. Ex-Leopard Hurricane, and Peter Anholt's actually the general manager of the Leopard Hurricanes here in Lethbridge. So they kept a lot of kids off the team that probably should have been there. They left drafted kids at home. They left power play kids at home. I'm not going to go through a whole bunch of names, but we've heard them all already. That they just didn't have the most skilled team they could possibly have. And I know you can't win with the complete skill guys alone, but when you struggle to score as they did, and hindsight is 2020, it's a bad look. And it backfired on Canada right from the get-go. The preliminary games, they didn't score a lot of goals. They scored 5 goals in the tournament altogether. It just never came together. Not 5, but you know what I'm getting at. It just never came together for this team, and that's roster management and coaching just didn't motivate these kids enough. They weren't they weren't on the ice enough, in my opinion. And then so there it is. Like, it's just, you don't want to blame the kids because they're 17 to 19 years old, but they got to be held a little bit accountable. But over the years, Canada's been able to overcome these small obstacles, and then you hear some things. Well, Canada, if they had Macklin Celebrini, who's in San Jose, and if they had the great Connor Bedard, who lit this tournament up a couple years ago, Canada wins this in a walk. Well, that's been happening every year since this tournament's been going on. That guys have been in the National Hockey League, and guys have been playing it, and they don't get brought back down. They're up with their pro team, and the team just doesn't want to give them up. So that's just not even an excuse. Yeah, would they have helped? Yes, but I'll bet there were other teams that had kids playing in the National Hockey League as well. So whatever, you just got beat. You got beat because you weren't good enough. You weren't beat because you didn't have it between the ears. I don't want to say they weren't good enough because they were in just about every game, right? They had a lot of shots. They were poorly coached, but they put pucks on net. They had some chances to win. Their goaltender was okay last night. You don't want to give up a short side goal last minute of a game. So obviously that never turns out well for anybody. But the kids they didn't get it done, and there's been teams that have been just as skilled or less skilled that have won this tournament for Canada in the past. So you can't blame the kids. You can blame the coaches. You can blame all three. You can blame all three if you want. Like it's a combination of all three the way it goes on, but not meddling for the second year in a row is a problem. So all this finger pointing that's getting directed at the kids and Easton Cowan, who I haven't been the nicest guy to in the last week and a half. You can blame everybody. You can blame all these guys, all these different guys. But here's the deal. I don't really blame them. I don't really blame these kids. I don't, because every year, like you can't tell me that like the most skilled team always wins. The most fit team always wins. You can't tell me that. This goes way back to 1972, even before I was born. You can't tell me that the Canada won that Summit Series, the first one international, that 8-gamer with the Russians. You can't tell me that Canada was the more fit team. They weren't. You can't tell me that Canada had the most skilled players. They didn't. You can't tell me Canada had the best athletes. They didn't. You go year in, year out. Canada puts together teams that just are really good, and they have top high-end talent, and then they have a bunch of guys who are good old Canadian hockey players. Crash and bang and do it right and put effort in when right from the get-go. That don't mind scoring a bunch of goals early. Canada used to put up 10 against Germany, 10 against Latvia, 15 against whoever. They're not doing it anymore. Why? Because other teams can play hockey as well. Other countries have been able to play hockey for a long time. The Swedes have been extremely skilled for a lot of years. The Russians have been, like, they're not in it obviously now. The Russians, the Czechoslovakians, when it was just Czechoslovakia. Now it's Czech Republic and Czechia. They've been extremely talented for a long time. They're just as talented as Canada. The Finns, just as talented for a lot of years. For lots and lots of years, all these European teams, and then the Americans have always been just as skilled. The Americans could always skate. They just didn't have as many players. So all these teams have been able to skill-wise be just right there with Canada. But there was always one factor. There's always been one factor. Canada would find a way to win because they had good old-fashioned Canadian heart. And I know it sounds cliche and I know it sounds ridiculous, but I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong in this one. Canada hasn't always had the most skilled team, but they would dig deep and they would find it. John Tavares, not that many years ago, it's been a lot of years now, 2009, 2010 New Year's. They were down. He said, no, we're going to get this done. I'm going to put this team on my back. I'm going to do this. First overall pick. Yep. But you know what? It takes those guys. Canada's always had those guys that would just dig down deep, do what they're told, find a way to win. They would get a goaltending performance of the ages because they wanted to win. They knew how to win. They knew what it took to win. You know who I blame? You know who I blame why the Canadian heart is gone? Hockey. I blame hockey in this country. Why Canada hasn't been as dominant over the years is because of hockey. Because of the way people have been grifting over these parents. I blame the parents. I blame these academies. I blame these skill development people. I blame all of the stuff that goes on a daily basis these showcase tournaments, these spring tournaments, these on and on it goes. And all these games that don't mean a thing. These kids play more non-competitive games than anybody in the history of hockey. Every team does it. Every country does it. But you know what? Back in the day, you know why Canada would win? Because they played games that matter. They were on the ice playing games that mattered against different community teams, wanting to win, not out there for themselves, not out on special skills lessons. They weren't. They played games on their own, with their own teams or their own communities that mattered. Not putting these teams together because their dad didn't little Billy got cut. They played games that mattered a ton, and that's gone. So all these other countries who have been just as good for years, Canada's regressed to what they are. They're not any better. We're not worse, or we're worse. They've always had the skill. These countries have always been just as skilled, if not more so than Canada has. But we had that one X factor, and that was good old-fashioned Canadian heart. And I know it's an old guy sitting on his stump right here on a podcast on a Friday morning. But that's what was the difference. All these other countries have been just as skilled guys. But we always had that one thing, and that was good old Canadian heart. The will to win, the want to win. Right from the second the puck dropped right to the bitter end. Canada would never have given up a goal 15 years ago, 20 years ago in the first minute of a game that mattered that much. There would have been guys laying on the ice. It's different. I understand that. I understand the game is 1,000% different than it used to be 20, 30 years ago. And we're not going back to how that used to be. But if the people of Canada, with our high expectations, if we expect our team to win this tournament year in, year out, that's what has to change. That's the thing that has to change. Hockey is very expensive. So now you have a bunch of kids who have never had adversity in their lives because their parents got some dough. That's what's wrong. Hockey is wrong. That is what's wrong with Team Canada. Hockey is wrong with Team Canada. And the way that Hockey Canada picks their teams, the way that the minor hockey's played, these academies, on and on and on it goes. Work on your edges. No, go work on winning a freaking hockey game. Bumper. Like it just like, and anybody who says that hockey that I'm wrong, let's talk about it then. Let's talk about it. Has there been kids forever? Yep. That go on to different communities and play? Yep. But not that far away from home. People say, well, you went to Notre Dame. You know why I went to Notre Dame? I couldn't make a team here in Lethbridge. That's why I went. That's all that is. That's all that was. So don't come back at me with that one. Now these kids are going these different places all the time. Never have to play for anything. What are their stats? Where's the next showcase tournament? Where's this? Where's that? Where's some emotion? Yeah, you finally showed it last night in the third period. And then you showed it afterwards when you were crying the blues that you got screwed by the referees. You know, you didn't. Both teams had horse shit calls against them. It took me until 10:21 in the morning just to throw the first swear word out of the show. But that's the problem. The problem has nothing to do with that we're not as skilled. But you know what? Every team is just as good now. And they always have been. I hate to break it to you. All these other countries have been just as good skill-wise as good old Team Canada. But we won because we played with good old-fashioned heart. That's it. That's exactly what it is. And anybody who says differently, they're wrong. And you can't buy heart, Dad. You can't buy heart, Mom. Those academies, those learnings, those skill camps, the training, the stuff, you can't buy heart with that. If anything, you're taking it away. Because if I don't like it here, I'll take my ball and I'll take my net and I'll go somewhere else. That's what happened. That's what's wrong with Canadian hockey. Canadian hockey is what's wrong with Canadian hockey. It's regressed. For the simple fact is of the frickin' money that all these people are taking off of these parents. because hockey's expensive. Why is it expensive? Because you guys let it be expensive. You guys let it be expensive. You're on these teams that fly across the country to play in a tournament that means nothing. Showcase tournament. You don't even know what the score is half the time. Different junior leagues popping up out of nowhere. New ones all over everywhere because you're supposed to be good enough. You know what? It doesn't matter because there's going to be another team to play for. We'll always find something else. And that's what the problem is. That's why Canada lost last night. Canada didn't lose because of Dave Cameron being an idiot. Didn't help. Canada didn't lose because a bunch of kids tried their asses off because they did. Canada didn't lose because of roster construction. Didn't help. All those things didn't help. But they lost because of hockey, because the way it's put together now. Mark, that's the whole problem. The whole problem. Canada used to be able to put out two or three different teams that would medal. I wouldn't say win, obviously. They would put two, if you had two separate Canadian hockey teams in the World Juniors, because those kids, they played hard. They played for that medal. They played for the crest on their chest. They found ways to win. They weren't the most skilled. A lot of them didn't go on to long National Hockey League careers. But they found a way to win because there was heart. And you can't buy that. You can't. You never will. You never have. You never will. Hockey's what's wrong with hockey. It's not all the other stuff. It's not. There's skilled players all over everywhere. So there's going to be a hockey symposium guaranteed. Guaranteed. What's wrong with Canadian hockey? I just told you. Save yourself 10 grand. Save yourself 100 grand having all these people fly to somewhere. Just listen to this. That's the problem. You can't buy heart. Phil Esposito, remember that 72 goal? Look at the interview. When he's saying we're trying. And he meant it. And they went over to Moscow and they won a few games. That took balls. You see these Saskatchewan teams like this kids from Saskatchewan years ago, the Wendell Clarks, the Roy, look at that 86 or 87 Pia Stanley punch out. The next year they come back and win the whole thing. Great goaltending performances. Guys you'd never hear from again. And you just don't have that anymore. It's so different and it's so broken. Now you got kids who will never have that chance. They'll never have that chance to play for their country because of all the stuff. All the stuff. Now you got kids leaving home at the age of 8. So now those other kids don't get a chance to play with the good players. They never get a chance to get better. That's what's wrong with hockey. Canada lost last night because of Canada, because of hockey, because of the business of hockey. That's what went wrong. We have high expectations for our team here in this country, and we shouldn't, because this is what it is, and it ain't going back. Never will. Could they have won? Yep. Could they have better coaching? Yep. But you can't blame these kids. They're just a product of their environment. That's all they are. They're a product of their environment. Not their fault. Not their fault. You have these academies and these tournaments and these things popping up out of nowhere. I saw today on the 3rd of January, they're doing tryouts for the Brick under 18, or whatever that brick tournament is. I don't even think it's Pee Wee. Adam. Tryouts. So now you got parents traveling all over everywhere from Alberta to play for this team. And forgetting about the team that they already played for at used to be a tournament around Christmas time. So they probably aren't even playing for their home team anymore. At the age of 8. Spending thousands of dollars on hotels. Skates and sticks and synergy and I don't even know what they are anymore. All of this money by these people who are just taking it. And you're not blinking an eye. That's what's wrong. That's why we aren't guaranteed to win anymore. Because they don't know how to. They don't know how to win. Because it takes a lot. There's a fine line between winning and losing. We saw it on last night's hockey game. It's a fine line. One mistake, batted in the net, a bad call, that's a fine line. Blame the refs all you want. If you looked at if those hits were the reverse, you would have been calling for that penalty on the other way around. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. You know, there should have been a penalty call on McKenna in the corner. Yep, should have been. Wasn't. It's a fine line between winning and losing. And Canada's on the wrong end of that for one reason and one reason only. They don't know how to win because it doesn't matter when the kids are young. And now they're feeling the effects of it. That's why. And I'm not wrong. Anyways, it was a rough tournament. You know, something's supposed to be a great tournament here in Canada. It turned into a rotten tomatoes. It did. It was just right from the get-go. You never had the feeling they were going to get it done. They had some chances last night to extend the tournament. Just didn't get it done. Not good enough. Just not good enough. Top to bottom, coaching, management, players, parents, staff, hockey in general. Just not good enough. Not what we're used to. So maybe Canada's just, you know what? Maybe it's just time to lower our expectations. Just lower expectations. Just turn on the TV. It's a made-for-TV event. Be entertained. They win, they win. They lose, they lose. All right. Good enough. Because they're just as good. And they always have been. The other countries have always had skilled guys. Always. But we always had that one thing. Good old Canadian heart. Anyways, that's the 1420 Sports Bar podcast. For Beer with Sports, talking a whole lot more. This show, as always, was brought to you by SeatGeek.com, the SeatGeek app. Use promo code 1420 SEAT at SeatGeek.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, share everything on our social media and on wherever it is you get your podcasts as well. There it is. That's 1420 Sports Bar podcast for today. We'll talk to you guys again tomorrow. Have yourself a great weekend. If you don't tune in tomorrow, but yeah, that's it. It's too bad. It's too bad. And something's got to change. It ain't gonna. It's only going to get worse before it gets better. So we got to adjust, adapt, and adjust. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Have yourself a great day. You just listened to the 1420 Sports Bar podcast. For Beer with Sports, talking a whole lot more. We are part of the Belly Up Media Network. Let's get into it.